I can keep my answers short if most of you don't speak English, or otherwise I can make it a little more specific if you can understand English. So could you raise your hand if you understand English?
Chi di voi capisce l'inglese?
Oh, okay. Well, I see quite a bit of you do. I would say the majority, so I will speak a little longer. As to the book, memoir, which covers the first 40 years of my life, I'm working on the second part.
The third, perhaps?
I told you last night.
Yeah.
I can tell you more.
Yeah, totally.
Listen, where is the beginning? The theme of this first book is lies. The lies my parents told me. My parents have become the beginning of the story. For me, it's about their divorce, because the first 15 years are almost like fantasy years, innocence, very much so, innocence in the Garden of Eden, and the divorce was very brutal and sudden, and led me. It was a small family; just I was the only child, so it split up. The fabric tore apart, and that was rough. And pretty soon I was in Vietnam as a first time as a teacher, and then as a merchant sailor, and then this is an earlier time, and came back with many stories. Wanted to be a novelist. I dropped out of Yale. First of all, before I went to Vietnam, I dropped out of Yale after a year, and then I went back. I was in the class with George Bush, actually, which is kind of weird. A lot of very famous Americans now were in that class, and went back to. The book was very raw. It came out in 1997. It was called A Child's Night Dream. It was published in Italy too, and I went back to Vietnam when it was rejected. It was not published until 1997, and I went back as a soldier. And then again, you see here in this first formative years before I'm 21 years old, from the lies, or my parents' marriage is a lie, very interesting one. A lot of adultery, typical story, but both sides. And then the second big lie is Vietnam, which turns out to be, for me, quite a shock as to who's telling the truth. Because I hear on one side at the beginning, the American side, and of course I go over there and I see another side of the war completely as a foot soldier, not as an officer, as a foot soldier. Very important to be at the bottom level. And then after the war, many lies are told about it. Mainly, the biggest lie is that we're winning the war. That we're winning the war, which is nonsense. We're not winning the war. We never were. And then the other thing is that we're killing civilians. And the other thing would be, the third lie would be that we're killing ourselves. There was a lot of friendly fire. Friendly fire is when your own troops fire on yourself. You get killed by your own men who don't know how to shoot straight, or they panic and they shoot you in the back. I believe one of my 2 wounds was from friendly fire. And then, of course, during that whole period, the first thing when my parents were divorcing was the same year that Mr. Kennedy was killed. I went along with the story. It was another, in my opinion, a big lie, a big lie. And some stupid reporters always said that I was screwed up by my parents' divorce, and therefore I believed that Kennedy was killed because my parents divorced. It's like that. The point was that I didn't find out about Kennedy until many years later, but we all went along with the lie at that time, most of us, and he was buried, and it was all very ridiculous crime. We accepted the story. It was out of a movie or something, that story. And it fit the pattern. It was a far more dangerous heinous crime than we knew at the time, with very strong implications that tied it to Vietnam. We didn't know that. We did not know that Mr. Kennedy was trying to get out of Vietnam, and that Mr. Johnson, who took his place, completely opposite to Kennedy, committed himself entirely to that war in a big, big way. A lot of other things were going on, we found out later, and that was part of my growth. So finding out about the lie is very important to my life, which brings me to the latest. If you follow my work, it's all through there. Snowden is a big story about exposure of American surveillance of its citizens. Very shocking stuff. Wall Street. There's all kinds of stories. I don't want to go into all the movies, but the latest documentary is about nuclear energy. And of course, many people have superstitious and fearful ideas of what nuclear energy is. And it's interesting to go into the subject and find out what it is. And what it is quite different than what I was told. You know, I was part of that 1970s generation that followed Ralph Nader and Jane Fonda and Bruce Springsteen. Well, they told us nuclear energy is no good. And as a result, we were on the path to a nuclear energy in America, but we didn't continue on it. So we left off at about 20% of our energy came from nuclear. And it's worked for 70 years. It worked well. And it's cheap and efficient. At the same time, very effective in terms of we're not using fossil fuel, and that's the most important thing. However, France continued on to about 75% usage of energy. I'm not going to overdo it.
Yeah.